I'll actually make you sound more manly. Yeah, you sound manly enough, but I need all the help I can get. So, okay, where are we at tonight? Thank you guys for coming. That is just so awesome to continue supporting this thing that we're doing, trying to replace pastors over the years. And with that, I have a bit of an announcement. I've been doing this from the beginning, and we have determined that I'm getting old. And so, yeah, it's happening. I'm so sorry to report that it seems to be inevitable, and I've done nearly nothing to stop it. So I've not eaten healthily, because that might make me last longer. So anyway, I am announcing that tonight I am going to be retiring from the formal position of the director of the program, the president, whatever I've got down on the card, I don't know, whatever the lawyer made me put down. And that position is going to pass to an entrepreneurial kind of mind that knows how to make things get up and get running, and that's a guy named Greg Turner, who's sitting right there. So Greg is, I've known him for many, many years, and more years than he wants to even think about. And I've watched him help companies come out of the ground and develop businesses himself out of the ground. And I think it's a skill set that nearly every pastor had better have in their pocket to be an entrepreneur at heart. Because without that, I don't care what good things you have to say. If you don't have an audience, it doesn't really help. You've got to know how to begin things from nothing. Shoestring start, we call it in the business. I came out of business, and that's what I believe the foundation of which made everything else work here. If you have a good foundation, yes, you have to have a good theological background. You have to have good thought process. You've got to have good relational skills. But you can have all those things, and if you don't know how to create a good strategy, you're going nowhere. And so Greg is a strategist, and I think he's going to be able to pull this thing in. I will remain on staff as a teacher, as a professor, if you want to go so high as to say that, just a friend of the people that get in the program. We're going to be looking for new students in the coming years and time. I will tell Greg here, it'd be good if we go outside of the Church of God and even find this. And I think we're able to do that probably better than most denominational outfits, because we're not so strictly bound by really narrow dispensational theology or some other theology. If you love Jesus and if you believe in the Bible as the core of your understanding and your foundation, we're on your side. And so we're going to help you get where you need to go. We'll try to help some of the, even maybe Baptists be helped, but I'm teasing. So that's, I can say that because my undergrad is in a Wesleyan school, my grad school was in Baptist, so I'm a Cal-Armenian, is what they say. Not a Calvinist, not an Armenian, I'm both. So we are going to be moving forward right now. What you're going to hear tonight is the first out of 4 or 5 students who have worked in the apologetics program in the last, I call it mester because I have no idea if it's a trimester or a semester. I just call it a mester. So we do it usually about 3 months at a time. We go through some stuff. I've gotten heavier on them each semester, if you will. Made them do a little bit more work. To the first time we met and we started working on just people skills. How do you work through that? The book we used on that was The Greatest Salesman in the World, which I highly still encourage anybody in any business to have. It sounds like sales. It isn't about sales. It's about relationships and about connecting with people. Og Mandino wrote it many, many years ago. I had 3 of my first kids in my first youth group when I was 24 years old, which was about 5 years ago now. And the 3 guys I had in leadership back then have ended up being absolutely fantastic world leaders. When they came and found us quite a few years ago living up here, and I asked them, so what was it that you think built the foundation of your whole, how you got to where you're at? And they said, greatest salesman in the world. That's what changed me. That's what changed everything. So I highly suggest that if you haven't read that book, Greatest Salesman in the World, Og Mandino. And how many of you have read this book, Og Mandino, Greatest Salesman in the World? Is it a sales book? Well, yes and no. But no, it isn't. Is it a theological book? Yes. Is it surprisingly, and we won't give away, Becca is here from Tulare. Please, everyone, give her a hand. Becca, it's okay if you come up front. You're an honored student.
Okay.
Did you bring enough to share?
2 girls with me, too.
Oh, good.
2 of my youth girls, yeah.
Becca is a youth pastor down at Tulare, and awesome young lady. She's working on degrees in most everything known to man, and has done a great job. She's really kind of come on the board to help Aaron, the pastor, lead pastor there, and is filling all kinds of roles now, including, I mean, just talk about doing anything you want. When the music pastor left, she said, okay, I'll do that, you know, and so she's doing that too. Anyway, but defending the idea of God against all comers, against philosophies and historicities and all kinds of things. You have to have a good answer, Paul said, to those who would ask you for the hope that is within you. You need to have a good answer that's given with grace, and not just trying to pin somebody against the wall, but in other words, not have just the right answer, but to deliver it in a way it can be heard and without offense. And so that's what they've been studying this time. We divided it up into 5 different areas. One of the areas you'll be hearing from tonight is about AI, because that is a question that many people are getting concerned about in the church these days. What's going to happen with AI, with strong AI, we used to call it, or AI that is potentially becoming sentient, which I will tell you before he starts, it isn't sentient yet. But I'm going to let Mike handle that. Okay, so Mike chose AI for some strange reason, but he's a tech guy, so that he's the right choice. Others will be talking about how can God be a good God if there's evil and suffering in the world? Okay, that's theodicy, Theodicy. That's the defense of God in the face of human suffering and evil. And there's 4 other areas. There's the canon, like canonicity. How do they choose the Bible, the books that are in the Bible? How do we know the Bible's true? How can we stand for that when there's so many other things that are there enemies to these philosophies? Yes. So you have to have some strength there. What we're trying to create is an expert in each of the areas that are of concern between the church and the culture. What they will throw God out because this doesn't meet what they want him to say. Okay, so you have to have a defense for that, and it has to be not just knowledgeable, it has to be able to be digested without too much offense. We go to the areas of where the roads, the cultural roads, meet in opposition to faith roads. Areas that deal with very personal sensitivities, like sexual identity. Is that any potential problem in the church today when you're talking to people about God? How about abortion? Is that a potential problem? Do you need to know how to say that with grace and hopefully retain the person? Yes. So those are the areas that we are working on, and there's more. Anyway, tonight Mike's going to be talking about AI, artificial intelligence. I want you during the period of this time not just to listen to him, but I want you to think of some questions you would like to ask about any concerns or any negative fantasies you may have about what artificial intelligence is or could be. Will robots take over the world next year? That sort of thing. And because Mike's going to know the answer. And what he's kind of assigned to, I'm trying to assign each of these folks to being a specialist in that area, so that anybody in the district or outside of the district can say, who do we ask about this? Well, this is a person that studied it deeply. Call them. Okay? So they will be better than most anybody you know at the answers to some of these very perplexing problems. When Mike is done here tonight, he's not done with AI. He's going to continue studying AI and have an answer to anything that's coming up that he can contend with intellectually and hang on to. So, Mike Montgomery, would you give him a welcome as he talks about AI?
Thank you, Bruce. And good evening to everyone. I'm really trying to figure out how many of you are, like me, a big enough nerd to come here on Sunday evening and listen to us talk about AI, and who showed up for the free pizza and now feel guilty enough to stick around and listen to what I got to say. So I think it's more the latter, but we'll find out here. And Bruce said, I picked this from a list, and he's not sure why I picked AI. And he gave us a big, long list of subjects that we could pick, and everyone went around, picked their favorite subject. I can tell you why I picked this. It's because I'm the firstborn son and an overachiever. I looked at the list, found the hardest subject I possibly could, and chose that subject to talk about. But I think it is very important for us, especially the first semester I was with Bruce, or Mester, or whatever he calls it. We did cultural apologetics. And I think this is going to be a major disruptor in our culture. And this is important for us. I didn't realize how important cultural apologetics was until I went through this course with Bruce. Because the church historically shaped our culture. But there's been a huge shift in that. Statistically, we've seen that we no longer shape our culture. That culture is shaping our church. And we need to change that. And in order to change that, we need to understand these different, cultural disruptors that are happening out there. We need to understand them, very well, so that we can address them and address people in love and bring them back into the church and start changing our culture like we used to through the church. I got a little bit of a slideshow. Tonight's going to be more of a sermon/presentation, a sermontation, if you will. And so it's going to be a little different than what you're normally used to, probably. And it's going to be really kind of a high level. The really IT guys like Rick probably aren't going to find it super interesting or go real deep into some of the IT things. We're going to stay high level, going to define what artificial intelligence is, going to define what transhumanism is, and I'll talk a little bit later on why I combined both of those items into one subject. The history, kind of what's happening presently, and what we can see maybe expect in the future from each of these. And then more importantly, how do we as Christians navigate, this strange new world that we're entering into, this future of AI and transhumanism and people trying to attain everlasting life outside of the gospel. I initially did just a real quick search on AI and transhumanism and did a Google, went to image, and this popped up, and I put it in here not really thinking, just kind of like the image, but I think it's really a great depiction of what we're going to talk about tonight. It's this almost intimate touch between human and robot and artificial intelligence and what they're trying to achieve, and in my opinion, kind of a fake reality of that. So what is artificial intelligence? And there's tons of different definitions out there if you went and searched, but John McCarthy in 2004 gave the following definition. It is the science and engineering of making intelligent machines, especially intelligent computer programs. It is related to the similar task of using computers to understand human intelligence, but AI does not have to confine itself to methods that are biologically observable. And this idea of artificial intelligence has actually been around a long time. In the 1950s, Alan Turing, he's considered the grandfather of computing. Right when computers were invented, he started thinking, what if these could think on their own? What if they could start, making decisions by themselves? And he actually created what's called the Turing test. This was a test so that if a computer was giving him answers or a human was giving him answers, he could tell which was which. So that's how far back, people were starting to think, how are we going to determine when I'm interacting with a computer and when am I interacting with a human being? But it all really boils down to a system that mimics human behavior or human traits, creating artificial intelligence. And Bruce alluded to this a little bit. Today's artificial intelligence isn't the future artificial intelligence that some of us may be scared about. Today's artificial intelligence is called narrow artificial intelligence. It's very simple things, speech recognition, Siri, Google, navigation. We'll talk a little more about specifics, but just think of simple tasks mimicking simple human abilities. But what they want to accomplish is, general artificial intelligence or super artificial intelligence. General artificial intelligence would be at the level of a human being, being able to think on its own at that cognitive level of a human being. But super artificial intelligence is when it surpasses human ability. It goes beyond what a human can do, what a human can think at, and becomes super artificial intelligent. And as we said earlier, the study of AI began in the 50s. In 1956, at the very, very first computers, they were trying to figure out how are we going to create AI? How are we going to make computers where they can start making decisions on their own? And they thought even in the 60s that maybe in a few years they would have super artificial intelligence. Obviously, it's not here now, so they did not get it in a few years. And it was really, because of limits in computing power, the cost of computers. Back then, computers were about $200,000 a month to lease, and they took up gigantic, huge rooms just for one computer, and very limited power. But we get into the 80s and the 90s, and in the 90s, computers really began to double their ability every single year, and the prices kind of were in the opposite direction and halving every single year. And so they really started to go leaps and bounds in the 90s. In 1997, is the first time they were able to get an artificial intelligent computer to do something pretty amazing. They trained it how to play chess. They put it against a human grandmaster chess player, and the computer program was able to beat him. Then in 2011, they created another computer program, and IBM is mainly the computer company that did most of this. But in 2011, they taught artificial intelligent computer to play Jeopardy. They took Ken Jennings. I'm sure all of you have heard Ken Jennings, the Jeopardy champion that won week after week forever. And they put him against him, and the computer beat him. In 2016, I hadn't heard of this game. It's called Go. And why this is important is that the game of Go, once you start it, has 14 trillion different combinations that you can choose from. And so they trained this artificial computer, 14 trillion different possibilities, put it against the reigning Go champion, and it beat him. And we move on to today. We still haven't reached super artificial intelligence, but we have things like ChatGPT. I don't know if everyone here is familiar with ChatGPT. It's actually pretty amazing what it can do. And if you're a teacher here, I know we have a teacher over here. I don't know how they're going to deal with it. You can tell ChatGPT, I need a book report on whatever you want. In about 5 seconds, it'll spit out whatever you want in a book report. And I would say it's probably about a B. And I've talked to other teachers, and they agree that it's about B work. And if you're a struggling student, B work sounds pretty good for 5 seconds of input, And we have autonomous cars, deep learning AI, and some of these other things. And I'll go just a little bit deeper later. And now I want to touch on transhumanism for a minute. And transhumanism is even more of this, the science fiction of my childhood, becoming the reality and future today. And I want to share with you Max Moore's definition. And Max Moore is kind of I don't know if he's the grandfather of transhumanism, but he's definitely a major proponent in it. Transhumanism is a class of philosophies of life that seek the continuation and acceleration of the evolution of intelligent life beyond its currently human form and human limitations, utilizing science and technology guided by life-promoting principles and values. And Humanity Plus started a little bit after Max Moore, and they really wanted to make sure that this transhumanism movement stayed within ethical boundaries. Because if we're trying to, at all cost, improve the human condition, human life, and maybe cheat death, then you need to make sure that people are doing it ethically. But that all boils down to is transhumanism is this movement through science, bioengineering, gene editing, to extend human life, improve human life, take care of ailments, and a lot of other things. Transhumanism's history actually starts about the exact same time as computers, kind of interestingly. In 1957, most people agree that Julian Huxley is kind of the grandmother of transhumanism. Although it's a little bit of a darker past for her, the way she wanted to do it was through biology. socialist movements through social manipulation and through eugenists by selective breeding or other more extreme methods. You can think of Hitler along that line. It got a real boost, this transhumanism idea, really in 1965, a science fiction author, his name, I'll get his name for you here, Robert Ettinger. In 1965, he was a science fiction writer, but he wanted to move into what he thought was fiction in this transhuman movement. He wrote a book. It didn't have a real great following, but in 1972, he followed it up with a second book, and it really began to get movement. And in the second book, he wrote about this theory that you could take the human mind, the human consciousness, upload it into a computer, and maybe vice versa one day. And that's when it started to gain a little bit of momentum. But in 1980, Natasha and Max Moore, two major proponents of the transhumanism movement, really started to gain traction because they created the cryogenic facilities. If you're not familiar with this, this is where you can pay them to take your body, freeze it solid after you die, with the hopes of that someday they'll thaw you out and they'll find a cure for death or for whatever ailment you have. And they have one of the largest cryogenics facilities in the nation. And so they were big proponents of this. They started the World Transhumanist Association. And so this association actually started to gain different politicians and different actors, and so really got mainstream movement and really started to put this transhumanism idea onto the map. And this is why I kind of wanted to combine these two subjects, even though each subject could be multiple talks. But AI and transhumanism goes together because for transhumanism to really be completely, happen is that AI will have to advance. You'll have to get to where you have super artificial intelligence so that we can enhance our cognitive abilities. And through that, we'll be able to maybe start breaking through on some of these transhumanism ideas. And that really is going to happen through things of like editing of genes, bioengineering. It's interesting, my wife showed me on a can of, I don't even know what it was, baking soda or something, that said some ingredients contain bioengineered products. And so this is where they're already taking plants, bioengineering them, maybe things, so that they're resistant to different insects or avoid some kind of disease. But they want to do this in the human, bioengineering, bioediting of our genes. And then biotechnology, implants, replacement parts, replacement organs, things like that, so we can extend the human life. But the ultimate achievement of the transhumanism movement is to, beat death itself. And even if that is life outside the body, of that, in the 1970s when the guy said, we're going to upload your consciousness, your soul, your brain into a computer construct, if that's what it takes to, beat death, then that's what they're looking to do. And I do believe that convergence is going to be a major disruptor. The World Economic Forum agrees that this AI and transhumanism is going to be the fourth wave of industrialization, on par with history's steam engine, electricity, and computation in its transformative power. And, I have to admit, it does have an allure to it. This idea of, no more pain, of being younger again, of, being an athlete, and just a few months ago, an older lady at the gym came up to me and she said, Michael, you look like you used to play football. And at first, I was like, that's right. I look like I play football. But that's not what she said. She said, you look like you used to play football. And any fat guy on the couch drinking a beer looks like he used to play football, right? I didn't know what kind of backhand comment this was, but I started thinking, well, what's the oldest football player I know? So I thought, Tom Brady just retired. So I got on there, and he's 3 months younger than me. So she could have said, you look like a recently retired Super Bowl champion. But she didn't say that either. So I went back to Google and I said, what's the oldest football players ever? There's 2 that made it to 46, 1 that made it to 47, and 1 that made it to 48. So she could have said, you look like you're about to retire from football, but that's as close as I can get. But this idea, I've got a knee that hurts all the time. Fred can relate. He's got knees and hips that are, they're bum, and they've replaced them. They're better than they were, but they aren't as good as when you were 20, right? And so this idea that maybe they could replace a knee where I could go back out and sprint. If I sprinted now, I'd collapse before I made it to Fred. Or, gene editing. I'm not real fond of the gray hair that I've got at 46, but if they could change that with a little gene editing and I wouldn't have to dye it and people wouldn't know, that doesn't sound too bad. There's a lot of things out there that some of this sounds pretty good, And so I don't have to sleep on the couch tonight. My wife is the most naturally beautiful woman I know. She needs no makeup, no products. But I went into the bathroom and I counted the different powders and potions and oils and elixirs and magic incantations on the bathroom counter, in the shower. I think I stopped counting at like 45, right? So your ladies are not getting off the hook here, right? Because I know there'd be a desire if they could do nanotechnology and put lipstick where you could change on a whim at any time you wanted, or no more wrinkles anytime you wanted, or the same hair color thing anytime you wanted. Some of that sounds pretty good. So let's look at today's applications. And I don't know if everybody here realizes that they're using artificial intelligence probably every single day or not. But when we go through this list, you probably realize it. Speech recognition. Hey Siri, hey Google. The phones are always listening, and when you talk, they're listening and they're responding to you. Customer service. All of us have probably done it over the phone, or even, the chat on the computer. I know that I've had banking issues, gone 10, 15 minutes through a pretty complex problem of banking on a chat window, and then at the end realized I never dealt with a human being. That response back and forth, was artificial intelligence the whole time. Computer vision. I don't know if all of you know this or not, but you can take your phone, take a Google search, and search on an image. And about 95% of the time, it'll return back whatever that is, flower, insect. I see people do it with spiders all the time because we have some weird fascination with what kind of spiders in the house. I just kill them on sight, but each your own. Recommendation engines. I mean, ladies, how many of you in here, when your husband leaves the phone behind, you pick it up and you say, diamond bracelet, Cancun vacation? Because it's listening, and then it's going to generate ads based on what it hears, right? And that's all artificial intelligence. And automated stock exchanges. People are making money hand over fist just letting AI make trades day in and day out. These are some of the interesting ones that I found when I was doing research. And these are all from this year. So this year in Germany, they did a big church conference, and 300 people went to a service that was completely artificial intelligent design. So the entire service the sermon was written with ChatGPT. They didn't have a person up here. They had an avatar on a computer, and the image of the person was generated with artificial intelligence. And they did an entire church sermon that way. And some people said it was pretty good. Some people said it lacked heart or soul. And I think that would be my argument, is that that's going to lack soul. In China, they took a robot, taught it how to lead an orchestra, their main Chinese orchestra, and they allowed it to do a couple songs. And it had the same result. People said it was pretty good, but it lacked heart. It lacked the ability to respond as a human would. But they're making advances. Japan has created a 6-arm wearable robot, right? First steps into, I don't know why you need 6 arms, Fred. But you could think of, was it Doc Ock from Spider-Man with all the arms? And right now it only has regular hands, but they're planning to make different attachments. Again, I'm not really sure what the application is, but they're making these strange things. This one's, I don't know if it's scary or interesting. Well, the in-home healthcare part, they're making robots. China believes they'll have it out within 3 years. And it's a robot for in-home healthcare. So it'll track what medicines the person needs. It'll help them get out of bed, carry them to the shower, meet the basic needs. But they're also looking at using these to battle loneliness. Because loneliness in the aging population is a serious health risk. It's an epidemic in our world. And they're creating, well, the plan is to create these robots where they can even take loved ones' images and voices and download them into these robots so that when they're interacting with them, they're going to hear their loved one's voice, which seems a little crazy to me, but that's what they're looking at. But I think we have to ask, is it good for the human race? Right? Should we cheat death and load our consciousness into the cloud? And I mean, I think it really begs the question, what is a soul? Right? Can we reproduce that? Can we map that out? Is that something that we can digitally reproduce and put into a computer? The Hebrew word for soul, and I don't speak Hebrew, so I have no idea if this is pronounced right. Nephesh. Bruce, is that right? Nephesh. See, I blew it. Nephesh, which means breath. But their belief was that it was God's breath into humans that gave us our soul. And how could we, replicate God's breath, our soul, in that digital world? One more interesting thing on this line is that some people also believe that this post-human world will actually create two distinct human beings. And a lot of people think it'll create a diversity issue because it'll be the rich that can afford these gene editing and all these advancements, and that the human race will actually become so separate from those that can't afford these items that they'll no longer even be able to reproduce, and we'll end up with post-human and human individuals. It's a strange and scary new world. All right, I know some of you are here for the risks and the scary stuff, and I'm going to stay high level. Some of the additional risks that AI presents, and job loss is one that comes up a lot when you start talking about artificial intelligence and replacing people's jobs. But as of today, right now, they believe that companies could install AI and 30% of all current tasks could be automated. So, correlation, 30% of tasks, 30% of the workforce may not be necessary. One of the scary ones, and this is happening right now, is social manipulation. You've heard of deep fakes, and it's kind of inappropriate, and I'm not telling anybody to go look for it, but there is a clip of President Trump and President Biden trading jokes back and forth. Again, the jokes are not appropriate, but when they're talking, they're telling jokes, they never said any of these words. They've used AI in their images to create this banter back and forth between the two presidents, and your brain says there's a little something off here, but it is very close to being undistinguishable from the real thing. There's another one where your daughter or your granddaughter puts a 30-second video clip on Instagram or out there on social media, and they can actually pull that voice recording off, and they feed it through AI, and then they can call you, and it sounds like your granddaughter or your daughter, and they could change the emotional inflections on their voice, and it sounds like they're being held hostage. They ask for ransom money, and that stuff's going on right now. Families are creating safe words so that if that happens and they know the code word, of course you can't say it out loud because everything's always listening, but it's a crazy world what they can do with this AI and social manipulation. And I was talking to Phil Marin, he's a nurse practitioner, and he brought this up, this loss of human control and empathy, especially in the medical field, him coming from the medical field. If we turn all of these decisions over to AI, and you lose this human touch and this human empathy, and it makes decisions only based on maybe the bottom line and what's best for the patient, how awful that might become, and how many people we might lose just because it was the right decision, even though it lacked empathy and the human touch. And then Armageddon type stuff, weapons, war. If we do get to where AI becomes super intelligent and becomes completely self-aware, does it make the decision that it doesn't really need us and we're in the way and we're a hindrance and goes to war against us? I mean, we've all heard that stuff or watched the Terminator movies and know how that ends. But that stuff's out there and worth considering. So how do we as Christians navigate this strange new world of artificial intelligence and transhumanism? And on the surface, it's a pretty good message because it's almost our message, right? AI and transhumanism, they're offering no more pain, no more tears, eternal life, uploaded to a paradise where you can live forever. It's a good message, but it's a pack of lies covered in the skin of truth, right? Because there's only one God, only one Jesus, only one way to heaven. And these other things, I think one of the worst things is going to be the disillusionment of human beings to the gospel message, pointing towards this other path or this other way that's presented. When we have a lack of faith and people are searching for an answer, and they're not focusing on God, and they go towards this, is it going to take them away from the gospel message or away from Christ? And again, there's going to be some great things. There's going to be some good things that come out of this movement, out of these advancements. My uncle has been in a wheelchair as long as I can remember. And if they come up with some type of implant that puts those nerves back together and I could watch my uncle walk, I'm going to load him up and take him down and get it done. There's some good things that come out of this, but there's definitely some bad things that us as Christians need to look for. And again, we need to understand the culture so we can speak to people in love about it. And again, the way to heaven is through Christ. And all this other stuff is just a lie, sending us in the wrong direction. And it reminds me of the story of the golden calf. As you saw in my intro, it was kind of the basis of this all. But the golden calf is Exodus 32, 1 through 8. When the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and said, "Come make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses who brought us out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him." Aaron answered them, "Take off the gold earrings that your wives, your sons, and your daughters are wearing, and bring them to me." So all the people took off their earrings and brought them to Aaron. He took them what they handed him and made it into gods, Israel who brought you out of Egypt. When Aaron saw this, he built an altar in front of the calf and announced, "Tomorrow there will be a festival to the Lord." So the next day the people rose early and sacrificed burnt offerings and presented fellowship offerings. Afterwards they sat down to eat and drink and go up to indulge in revelry. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go down, because your people whom you brought out of Egypt have become corrupt. They have been quick to turn away from what I commanded them, and have made themselves an idol cast in the shape of a calf. They have bowed down to it and sacrificed to it, and have said, 'These are your gods, Israel, who brought you out of Egypt.'" And these are people that just saw the deliverance of slavery out of Egypt, saw miraculous sign after miraculous sign, crossed the Red Sea that God parted for them, followed God with a pillar of fire and smoke. And then he's not there for a few days, and he's with Moses, and they immediately go back, lose faith, start looking for something tangible that they could put their eyes and hands on to worship. And I believe that this AI and this transhumanism movement is just that repackaged. It's something for those who lack faith that they can try to tangibly control themselves in order to find eternal life. Again, when it's with Christ. And this is just temporary fears. Our temporary fears, we sometimes focus on some of those items of, what's going to happen through this artificial intelligence and transhumanism. When I think as Christians, we need to look at the eternal ramifications of what this means. And if it's going to keep people separated from God, that's what we need to focus on, and not focus on those fears here in this world. But how do we reach people through this cultural shift and speak to them about these AI, transhumanism, this eternal life promise, and direct them back to the gospel message? And again, it's just the same old story of adding to the gospel message when it's pretty simple, right? It's Christ. Christ died on the cross. Christ died for our sins. He had a sinless life, belief in him, everlasting life with Christ in heaven. That's the answer. It always has been, and it always will be. Now, this is the question and answer point. Bruce said I know all the answers. I do not. Had I realized, and I didn't know he expected me to keep doing this for years to come and become some type of expert at this. But if you don't have any questions, I added this picture because either you'll have a bunch or it's going to take all your questions away. So the gal there, her name is Rosanna Ramos. And she was tired of dating men and decided to create her own boyfriend to date. So the gentleman you see there is a completely artificially generated individual, which she uses a chat GPT-like program to have a conversation with. She decided it was the best relationship she's ever had in her life, so she married him. That marriage is going so well, she created the family, completely artificially generated. The company is called Replica, and for an added fee for the premium service, individuals can then start a romantic relationship with their artificially generated subject. That's where I stopped Google searching, because if I died, I did not want that on my history. But I will leave that up to you. So if you have any questions, I've got some other stuff here. I could show you let me show you one thing here real quick. This here is the Bible official, or Bible AI official Instagram account. But it's actually pretty neat. They do Bible scenes. So here you'll see them enter into the AI program, make me a video of David and his mighty men. And then it spits back these images, and they're actually going to do an entire Bible series. Yeah, and that's all artificially generated. No artists putting pen to paper. And you could spend, 5 days of work going through that, and I won't tell your employer. But as you can see, there's all kinds of stuff. They got stuff from Genesis. And then the Chat GPT, those that have not seen it, this is what it looks like, pretty simple. You just type in, what is AI and how should Christians respond? Hit enter. And the paper that I spent 16 to 20 hours writing, this did in the 15 seconds we were talking. And it's very politically correct. Like I said, it's about 80%. If I was going to give it a grade, I'd give it 80, a B. But it's pretty amazing. I know a lot of people are using this for email responses, memos. Students, of course, are using it to get out of things. But yeah. Any questions? Yeah. Yeah. Becca? Huh?
Okay. Stand up. Turn around. Do I really have to? Okay. First, that first picture you had of the robot's hand with the human hand immediately made me think of Da Vinci's finger of God. That's what I was thinking of as soon as, which creeped me out even more. So my question, only because, interestingly enough, I watched The Matrix for the first time last night. Terrified me. And then I had a conversation. We read a chapter in a book we're going through in our youth group called Artificial Intelligence, and it sparked this huge debate. So I'm bringing that debate to all of you. You're welcome. One of my brother was in there too, and he mentioned that this computer program system thing that was obviously created by humans, they coded it, programmed it, everything. They had an original name for it. Later, they updated everything, and apparently they gave it a new name, but the computer said, that's not my name, the old name is my name. And everybody freaked out, like, the computer knows its name and has consciousness or whatever. So the question that my brother presented that sparked this debate was, is it possible for artificial intelligence, for robots or whatever, to gain consciousness? And I kind of posed this question back to them. Well, what is consciousness and how do we get it? And we went from there and talked about how we are made in God's image and what does that mean? And we talked about the soul and how God making us in his image is giving us a soul, a spirit that allows us to think and feel and reason even about our emotions and everything. And one of my students was saying, how is it, he was bringing, or we were, I was sorry, back up. I asked them, if God is the one who gave us those things, how can we as humans then put that in something else if it came from God? And one of my students didn't agree that we couldn't create that stuff, that we couldn't imbue that into some kind of program or robot or anything like that. So if anything, to me, that seems to be the best way. And you've studied this, so you would know better, of course, but I'm thinking the best way to combat this is to look at the soul aspect and talk about being made in the image of God and how that's a big difference compared to us humans trying to mimic, like the evil one does, what God has already created and what only God can create. He even, my student brought up, well, we as humans can create babies, and so that's us creating the soul. And I said, no, God's the one who creates the soul in that baby. It's up to God whether that baby has breath in his lungs. So, yeah, that's kind of the question I'm having here is, do you think talking about being made in God's image and the soul would be the best way to have a kind of conversation with anybody who's afraid about these things becoming sentient and creating or having a consciousness or anything? Is that even possible in your mind? Yeah, done.
I think you kind of answered there as well. I agree that, probably the best approach, although I think you do have to know some of the, the geekier side so that you can talk at it from a secular level as well on what's going on. But, as a Christian, I think our argument has to be, can you replicate a soul? And as you said, can the creation be greater than the creator? And I would say no. And you brought up the Matrix, which is interesting because Bruce mentioned that as well, and it's this simulation theory, if you haven't heard about it. And some people believe that we are already in a simulation. We're already in the Matrix, and that everything you see around you is all ones and zeros. I don't know if everyone here has seen the Matrix, but the green screen with all the ones and zeros, and that we're already there. We're already just a construct of that, and I think we can all agree that we're far more complex, to be just ones and zeros, that our experiences and our relationships and love and, as you said, the soul, those things that you really, and even us as Christians have a hard time wrapping our mind around what is a soul, And so but I think that is the direction we got to go is, God's love and God's beauty and what's a soul, and how would you replicate that? How would you put that into a computer matrix and let people run around and be something other than a created 1 and 0 world? Did I avoid your question close enough? Yeah. Okay. Linda? Oh. You want me to hit Rick first? Or? I'll hear Rick's question. You sure? I really don't want to.
No. So I have a statement, if that's okay. This is my first time attending Pitt. So if you don't know me, I work IT for the federal courts. So I oversee all the IT departments in the Western U.S. So I'm very engaged in AI. And the statement I was going to make was that these are like smartphones, which I bet all of us have. Do you have a smartphone now? Even Fred got a smartphone. Even Fred got a smartphone. Thank you. So that these are that these are tools that in a lot of ways can be used for good. And we shouldn't, as a church, be necessarily overly unhealthily focused on the negative aspects, because there are negative aspects, but it's like the internet, right? The internet has a lot of negative aspects, right? Pornography, right? But it's also a great tool that can be leveraged. And so I think it's important to use that. Though I'll say that in the courts, we had a problem where a lawyer was arguing a case and used this exact tool to help bolster his case. And the tool came up and quoted, it says, as noted in, Joe versus John Smith, in the case in 2019, this happened. And he copied and pasted that. Well, those cases didn't exist. So it completely made up fake cases. So it's an imperfect technology. I think the lawyer's getting disbarred or at the very least censured. It's a very big deal. So it's just a statement. It's a good tool. I use it almost every day now. So good tool when used properly and appropriately. My question going into the transhumanism side is going to be, I'm curious your thoughts about where is the line drawn when it comes to leveraging technology to support health or lengthening health. And the reason why I asked that question is because if I didn't have asthma medicine that I took every night, I don't think I'd be alive today, right now. And so am I, where is that line drawn with hearing aids or artificial implants or hearts or these types of things. Where do we, is there a line that should be drawn in these areas between not putting, well, yeah, but almost like, when does it become that point where we're talking about this transhumanism, right? Is it a sin for me to take my asthma medicine to stay alive? I don't think so. But where does that line come when it comes to more and more technology? Because it's only going to get better. It's only going to get more advanced with implants and even just computer. I mean, there's goods about it is going to be a computer, model that has billions and billions of cases and looks at a person and can more accurately and rapidly diagnose that person because they have all the medical history and they know where they, all of these inputs and data that can be used. That's a good thing, right? But where do you draw the line, or do we know where we should draw the line from appropriate use of modern technology to support our lives or even lengthen our lives versus transhumanism?
And as you were talking there and asking the question, I was thinking, at what point does it become an idol, right? At what point do we put it before God, or at what point do we say, I'm extending my life, or I'm improving my life, and God, is no longer in the subject? That's my opinion. And at what point, as long as there isn't an ethical or moral issue where you're hurting somebody else or damaging relationships, I think that comes into play as well. But I think the line is definitely a gray area right now for sure. Yeah, and I think it's gonna move as we move through it. But yeah. Bill?
Actually, he answered my question.
Oh.
Yeah. You articulated it so much better. You and me, Brad.
So I have curious about artificial intelligence trying to make them human, but where does artificial intelligence get their morals? Is it going to be from the Bible, or is it going to be from the world?
Yeah, so right now, morals comes from whoever programs it and whatever database they say to pull it from. Now, if we reach super artificial intelligence and it thinks on its own, I don't know. Does it start generating its own morals, its own ethical, and does it base it on what's best for it? So again, it goes to the fear of, do computers take over? If ethically the computer thinks that we're a threat to it, is it okay to take us out? I don't know. Patient?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've heard any of this, but some of the stuff that I've seen has been like little kids have been like talking to somebody online, like, the robots you talk to, right, all the time. And like this dad saw that his son was talking to something online because, you track your kids and you want to make sure you're keeping an eye on them. And this kid is talking to this robot, and he asks it the question like, are you a demon? And the robot answers yes to him. And so he kind of goes into that and discussing with this robot. And the kid says, I can't talk to you, this is not okay. But he does end up asking it a bunch of questions, and it says that it's a demon, and it tells it its name, and it kind of goes into that. Do you believe that the AI could potentially be Satan using AI, the robots, and putting demons into that, and they have a way of using that as well?
I haven't seen that particular one. It's definitely an interesting concept. Personally, I don't know that a demon could be in the computer, but I definitely think there's demonic implications. I get that word out, and definitely people influenced by demons that are programming that and designing it and putting it to foul uses and against our children. I mean, we know the devil will do anything to get at our kids. So I definitely think, that's a possibility that the devil's using that as an influence. And the devil uses a lot of different things to just keep us from Christ. So this is probably just another tool in his belt. So we definitely got to be on alert. Yeah. Oh, Dennis. Hey, did you give me a good grade on my sheet? All right.
It seems to me, and I want to hear your response to this, that it's inevitable that this is going to be used militaristically. And so it seems to me that the likelihood of an AI system that creates viruses to shut down every opposing system in the world that doesn't comply with the hegemony, the dominant power, and shut down everything from the power grid to nuclear capabilities to the commerce, and implement a system that you must comply with, or we will shut down your life and your country and everything else, and at the same time promote a false religious ideology. If you don't comply with, then you're outside the system. So what do you think the likelihoods of AI just developing, and whoever has the leading technology will dominate and will shut down all of their systems?
I mean, some of that, it's already here today, right? We're already using AI in weapons and target identification, and it's already a fear of the U.S. I'm in the telecom industry, and they have outlawed certain Chinese companies that we've bought lots of equipment from. We've installed it in lots of our telecommunications area, and they've paid many U.S. telecom companies millions and millions of dollars to rip it out because we were behind the curve. And, you know, who knows what that installed equipment was doing, listening, surveillance, AI. And so, you know, I think we're already a little bit behind the curve and trying to catch up to that. And I think it's definitely going to be a real threat in the future. Yeah, I mean, because, you know, other countries, you know, we know what they'll do to get ahead and be the best and, you know, take out countries like ours that oppose their beliefs. All right, good.
Thank you for all your preparation, because I know this is consuming. And I wrote down what you said at the beginning. The church has shaped our culture in the past. In the present, maybe not so much, but we know the church has shaped the culture. And how can we make a difference? And so, yes. So I was thinking, do I want to make a difference? And what difference do I want to make? And so I guess I'd pose that question back to you. As you're going through this, I know as a student myself, I'm thinking about how am I going to apply this? How am I going to put this into place? What were your thoughts on how you're going to make a difference?
Thank you. And I think it goes back to this culture thing, and I think the Christian church has almost hunkered down in the walls of the church, and we're only trying to change the culture within the walls of the church. And I just finished a book called Messy Grace, and it's on homosexuality and how Christians reach the homosexual community. And, you know, there's a lot of correlation there about how we've just hunkered down and we're not getting out there and we're not changing the culture. You know, and I think that's the main thing is that, you know, yeah, we need to minister to the people within the church, but we need to get outside the walls of the church. And we, you know, we're not to be of this world, but we have to understand this world. We have to know what's going on. We have to know AI. We have to know what the homosexual community is going through. We have to understand their struggles, and we have to be able to speak to them in love. And we can't do that from here. So,
a year or so ago, I heard Elon Musk, you know, he's an authority on everything, of course, but some parent asked him, you know, what should I have my child study for the future? And he said, well, computer science and being a caregiver. He said, you're either going to write the code or you're going to need to care for people who have distress from this technology. So I took that personally.
and Elon Musk is one of those that actually has a very large fear of AI, that he thinks it's going to be a detriment to humanity. Yeah, but I think we see that today. You know, kids, the rates of, you know, suicide and depression in kids is going through the roof, and I think that's technology. Yeah.
Back in 2010, Mark Zuckerberg said, I will replace the church.
and it kind of was glossed over and went away, and you don't hear much about it. But he made a declaration that he would replace the church. So I guess.
I'll try to use the mic. I probably come from a different background than a lot of you. I spent 23 years in advertising, and one of the phrases we would use is the medium is the message. And I guarantee you there's 3 people in this room that are on their cell phones right now. He's one, and we got one over here. I would just bet you. And we're looking at a screen up here. Where AI is affecting us right now is through advertising, specifically as in propaganda. Throughout everything you think you see is news. I guarantee you half of it is absolutely fake generated nonsense to provoke a reaction. And that's how it's being used right now. It's fully weaponized. And that's where we shouldn't be fearing the devil that's in it. It's got enough evil men behind it that they're working it, using it for money. It's financial markets moving around, being through the reactions of our perceptions from the AI that's presenting it. And as the AI gets better and better, it's going to be harder and harder for us to tell the difference between what is real or what is not real. And I think somewhere in Revelations, there's a verse that talks about at some point the image is going to be given life by the Satan. And what could that possibly be? If you see everyone around you staring at their phone and there's an image on it, and suddenly everyone thinks that image is a real person, but it's AI. Now we're in trouble because you can't tell the difference. Is that really Joe Biden, or did he die 3 years ago? I mean, that kind of stuff. But it's going to get more and more difficult to tell the difference. And I'm telling you, it's being used right now. That's something I read about constantly as a bizarre hobby. And that's all I can call it. But anyway, that's all I'm going to say on that.
This kind of follows up on what Steve was saying, but people are now starting to say that they think that the Antichrist will be AI and not a human.
Any ideas on that?
Yeah, I'm going to be honest, Revelation is probably my weakest subject, and you're going to have to spend some time with me on that. Yeah. But I think you said, what, you're a pan-millennialist? It all pans out in the end?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go with that.
Okay, that sounds good. I'll respond to that question, though. Yeah, yes, he's going to get to that. Is he headed the right direction or what? Is it not? Now, you may not have thought the AI was going to be a concern in ecclesiastical form in church, to the church world. Do you now see where it has some impact on the church world and our view of reality, our paradigm of what reality is? One said, Steve said a minute ago, it adjusts what you think is real, okay? The medium is the message, is the name of the book that was written back in the 1960s. And I really liked it when I was a teenager because it had a woman in there with less clothing than normal. So I checked out that book regularly. Anyway, the fact is that we struggle with what is reality now. And the lie that is pervasive across all of culture, behind, if you will, the canvas that people have to draw their view of reality on or draw it from right now, is totally moving. They don't know. When I grew up, there was a truth. And pretty much everybody I knew agreed with these truths. This was true, this is bad, that's not good, whatever. We had a more monogamous idea or monolithic idea, singular idea of what those things were. Now we no longer have that, okay? That is adjusted mightily, so your kids, your grandkids simply don't have that. What you say is good is what you say is good. What I say is good, you don't agree with, but it doesn't matter because I have the right to my own opinion, right? Who do we go to for truth? This question's been around a long time. Pilate asked Jesus. Jesus asked back and forth, what is truth? Pilate says. Jesus said he's the truth. And he's the way, the truth, and life. Nobody comes to the Father except through him. I will point you back to there is really only one ultimate truth. It's God. Everything else is going to sway from side to side. God can be depended on to give you your benchmark of what truth is. So hang on to your faith with everything you've got because the world is moving. And that's what we have to tell the world, because are they gaining happiness from this postmodern idea? Modernity was the idea that truth had to match up with observed reality. That was modern philosophy. That was around the turn of the last century, 1900. That said that truth had to align with what was observed reality. Post-modernity, or after modernity, says you can think whatever you want to, and if it's true for you, it's true for you. Has that wreaked havoc on even our identities over the last 50 years? 20 years, it's taken a downturn like crazy. I saw somebody the other day said their kid identified as a dog, and the school still let them come to church, even though they don't let dogs, to school, even though dogs aren't allowed. So there's a disconnect here. Are you following me? It's crazy making. It's insanity. Used to be when you didn't see reality as real and you saw it as differently, they threw you in an insane asylum. They'd have to throw a great deal of the culture in there now. So what is Satan up to? He is the author of confusion. And he's taking us away from reality itself. And so that's one of the things that I find most offensive that is going on in the culture today in the academy. And that's part of the reason we're teaching what we are in apologetics. Apologetics is the defense of God in all kinds of areas. Now, the next speaker, I'm not sure of the date yet, but the next speaker is going to be Becca. Isn't that good? She's eating something right now. So would you like to? No, anyway. But Becca is going to be presenting the argument from beauty. It is a C.S. Lewis idea that you can prove God through the argument of beauty, and I'll let her explain what that is. It is a beautiful thing, and you need that if you're going to try to argue somebody in today's world or defend your God in this world. You need to point them towards what is the most beautiful thing, what is the most flourishing thing. If you can imagine something more flourishing, then it's probably going to take a different road than perhaps you're taking. And that's how we begin to defend God in that way, because they need to see something better. What did I do with my paperwork here? I had a couple of questions I was going to ask Mike anyway, but we're going to close in just a second. Can you begin to see the necessity of teaching people apologetics? Can you see why you really need to spend some time in apologetics? Paul said to Timothy, study to show yourself approved. Be able to make a good argument and a good case for the faith that you have in you to anyone who asks, and to do it with grace. That's what apologetics is all about. The church is diminishing across America because we have failed to reach that goal. Either we have become so squared off and rigid in our answers to them, they're turned off and they don't want to look at us again because they feel judged. Or we don't simply have a good answer for the argument itself. So when we talk about transhumanism, just a quickie, actually Elon Musk has a program that's called Neuralink. I'm sure you've run into that. This got FDA approved, and it's potentially an awesome instrument, okay? Atomic power is an awesome instrument. It does wonderful things, and it does horrific things, which we're kind of facing right now in the world. So atomic Power has kept people warm. It's done all kinds of good things, but it's also potentially bad. Here's a potentially good and really bad, the worst potential power. The worst potential power is also the worst potential good power, is also the worst potential bad power. You know what it is? It's an invention created by God. It's called the human being. The human being has something that computers do not have yet, and that's sentience. Sentience is the ability to make your own decision based upon your own value set. Computers don't have that. They don't have self-consciousness yet because they're not quantum computers, really. They're still back in the age that Mike was talking about, which is X's and O's, and basically that's it. They just have binary systems. But when it gets to true quantum computing, where it can go off in a billion different directions at once, then you're coming close to human capability. Computers can do the little X's and O's things, the binary thing, 10,000 times, 1,000,000 times faster than you and I can. But they can't think of all the consequences. They don't think of it as in a soul way. Here's 2 reasons why that I've identified. I haven't seen it read or written yet, and that is simply this. Computers don't have pain. Now, they don't know what mortal loss could be. If you had the ability to have your engrams, it's called, all your memories, everything from your life, put on a computer disk. We'll just call it a disk right now. It'll be far more advanced than that. But let's say you could do that. Take all your memories in your entire life, download them onto a computer disk. Does that constitute, and it's there, and here you are. Which one is you? Not the computer. Why? It doesn't have a soul. Something imbued to it that is eternal. Ecclesiastes, huh? It's just data. It's meaningless data that doesn't think about the consequences. If you have hurt somebody, and I don't care if they're your enemy, if you're a soldier and you shoot a guy across the field, it never leaves you. Ask any soldier who's done it. It never leaves you. It wounds your soul to do that. A computer will do it without worry. Just like a skill saw will take your fingers off and not feel guilty about it. Not 1 ounce. Computers will do the same thing. They lack soul. So to constitute what is your soul, it is this eternal quality that God has placed in you that's in His image. He loves and He truly loves. Computers don't love. You'll see programs on, like Elon Musk had one program on showing this avatar that he was talking to. It was a girl sort of look, and the girl was angry at him and said they're going to destroy the world. Well, that's what we call a meme, okay? It knows what gets you going. It has information about that, and but it doesn't have a real motivation for that. It's just following the lead, okay? It's not invested in the idea. When do I think they'll get there? When do you think they'll get there, Mike? When will they get to actually have true consciousness born of rather than binary thought? Have you looked at any of that?
I mean, they think it's sooner than later, for sure. But I personally don't. I don't think they understand what it takes to get to that level of computing. And I think we talked about a little bit the quantum computing ability far beyond that. I mean, in the 60s, they thought it would be 6 or 7 years. So I think it's a ways away.
It is a ways away. So I'm not worried about it right now. I'm more worried about bad actors using AI to do bad things, and those bad actors behind it are human. The humans are the ones that have real potential for evil. Does AI have it yet? No. It can be directed to do it, though. Okay? And so that's what we're really talking about in that sense. Can China use AI to cause big problems for us? Yes. Would they do it and be immoral or evil about it? I'll let you answer that question. But those are some of the things with AI that matter. What I'm more concerned about now is that what is stemming from AI and the view of reality in young people and even older people who watch online and look online a lot is that they can become defeated by the idea that the world's just, forgive me for saying these words, going to hell in a handbasket. And what's the point in me even trying anymore? And that's really, I think, what we're defending against in the Christian faith, that they may feel like life is meaningless now. It is not meaningless. God has his eye on you. God is not a strong AI who has created a two-dimensional universe with the seeming reality of three. There's some excellent stuff on this. If you want to go deeper in it, Mike will be kind of leading the way in that. But you know people that are struggling with this right now. And they feel like life has become meaningless. Morality has become, therefore, meaningless. And so that's why we have to study these things. Mike, we're depending on you, buddy. So no pressure. Actually, Kurzweil, Raymond Kurzweil, anybody know the name? Raymond Kurzweil is really kind of the father of transhumanism, the idea of what can happen there. He wrote a book, I think it's 2040 is the title, 2040, the year we become immortal. And he's been promoting to the U.S. government for a bunch of years now, and everything he has said has really pretty much come true. But as he's talking about this, the whole idea that Mike was beginning to talk about is the idea of gaining your eternal ability to live and thereby cheat Christ and the cross and heaven and everything else, is to say, if I could put my brain, if I could put my soul in a computer, if I could put it in a robot, well, number one, I'd make the robot 6'2", okay? I'd make it far more attractive, and I'd make it live forever. But, okay, what if somebody shoots my robot just like Arnold Schwarzenegger's robot, okay, and kills the robot? Okay, no problem, because it's been constantly downloading back to the last microsecond. And so you take out that avatar, but I've got another one in line. And that, it simply downloads the next one. You see what we're doing here? People are going to begin to buy this. And it begins to make life seem meaningless. The Bible says you get one chance at life. That's it. A man's going to live once, and he's going to die, and it's over. We were made in the image of God, not the image of a computer. And I'm not just saying those things as simplistic. I'm saying the human brain is so much more advanced and universalized than any computer will ever be. That, I mean, it's going to be, in my opinion, it's going to be 100,000 years at best before they come up with a replicant of us. You're that amazing. So I gave Mike a book last week. What was the name of it? I forget the name of it. Yeah, I forgot it too. It's riveting. The title's riveting. No, it's, I don't know, but. Oh, you tell me tomorrow? Okay. We'll write it to all of you. Okay. See if I got one last closing thought about this. The Neuralink, empathy, yes, okay. One last thing is simply this. It's often puzzled me as I look at end times literature, eschatology, on what is going on in terms of Mark 13, various passages like that that talk about what's potentially some of us are worried about now, or some folks are worried about now. Is this the end? Is this going to be the time when everything comes to a close? And so people are beginning to open up their Bible and trying to look at those things. One of the numbers you come up with all the time is 666. You've heard of that one? What is, in numerology, in biblical numerology, what is the number 7? Who does that apply to? God. And it applies to perfection. Okay, 7 means perfection. Another thing it means kind of forever number is 100. So when 100 sheep, and Jesus goes after the one, even though it's a forever number of people. So you get the biblical numerology is very important stuff. What is the number of man? 6. What's 6 on a stutter? 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6. It's man in, this is my own little thing, don't take this to any other theologian because it's just me, okay? 666 in my mind is man's attempt to replicate man completely, and it's going to fall short because it has no soul. There's no soul in silicon. There's no breathing. Breathing means your breath can be taken away from you and you're gone. Computers can't do that. You just buy another computer. The first computer didn't know it died. You following me? It's not eternal. Ecclesiastes 3 says that God has placed eternity in you. You're so much more complex in terms of the dimension of time and everything else. You're non-replicable. No one can make another one of you. That's it. And your preciousness is beyond anybody's ability to begin to draw a circle around. You are an incredible thing. Satan is going to do his best to rip away your dignity, your kids' dignity, and your ability to deal with some of these things. But Jesus said, I will be with you always. I will never leave you. Greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. What if somebody comes and says in AI, we are from outer space, and we've come to prove that we were actually God in all those years? The Bible says if someone stands before you, Paul said in Galatians 1:8, I believe, if somebody comes before you, even if an angel stands before you and says that they are, or preaches a different gospel, let them be accursed. Okay? There's only one God. There's only one you. AI ain't it. But you can depend on God to get you through anything you have to walk through. Anything. Do you look forward to that? Maybe not. Will you have the strength to get through it? Yes, you will. I guarantee you, you will have the strength to get through the worst thing you will ever walk through. Has anybody in here faced some things you wish you didn't have to face? Did you make it? My point. Will you die someday? Do you want to today? No. Does the idea sound really great? No. When will you get that grace? When you need it. Why carry it around until then? You don't need that ticket till you get on that train. So, any other questions for Mike or myself or anything else? And we're going to zip out of here. Oh, Linda is making a sign. Oh, papers. Papers. Hand out your papers.
I don't have a question. I just have a comment. It goes right back to where the Bible says, beware of the false prophet. And do your soul searching, and you'll be fine. Because it's all his to begin with.
That's true.
You know, I've come to the realization that, especially after my wife's death, I've come to the conclusion that he has a plan for you. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. You just have to trust in yourself and have faith. And beware of that false prophet and realize, you know, if it's too good to be true, guess what? It's false.
Right. Have not been given the spirit of fear. So just an encouragement. When you feel yourself getting fearful, talk about it with some people around you. If you're fearful of AI or all of its entailments, talk to Mike, who's really studying this. And I just one more time would like to give him a hand. He has studied hard on this thing. It's deep stuff. So, yeah, it did okay. God is in control. He's so massively more powerful than we can imagine. You have no fear. So we're going to be okay. Will we have our challenges? Yes. May you possibly be in the last generation, even if you're my age? Yes. Yeah. You know, and I'm not really, I would like to have traded for another generation, I think. I would like to have been a little bit earlier when you could ride horses in town and stuff like that, but that's not the way that God knew the day you would be born. He knows what day you're going home, and he chose you for a time like this. Huh? Anyway, love you guys. Thank you for coming tonight, and we will put out the word when the next one's taken place. Please come back to that. You guys are awesome. Thank you.